Haribo, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the Sankirtan movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. All glories to the mission of Srila Prabhupada to deliver the message of Lord Chaitanya to every telephone and TV screen on the earth. Of course, I'm referring to the fact that nowadays the opportunity to give people Krishna consciousness has expanded through technology. And this technology, when it's dovetailed properly in the service of Krishna, becomes a great boon for the Sankirtan mission of Lord Chaitanya. This is the idea behind the launch of our upcoming TV programming on YouTube, Prabhupada TV. This Prabhupada TV will be a daily schedule of Prabhupada-focused events and teachings to attract a variety of listeners or viewers who are interested in learning about Krishna consciousness, and for those that are already devotees of Lord Chaitanya and of Srila Prabhupada, to get the purified message of Krishna consciousness as was taught by Srila Prabhupada to all of us in his Vani incarnation. This is something that's greatly needed in the current times that we're in because of the chaos that we find in the Kali Yuga atmosphere that is permeating everywhere on many, many different levels. So again, we want to thank everybody. I know that gradually this program will expand in due course of time as we continue to educate people on the actual instructions. And to be clear, we are not interested in promoting anyone else except Srila Prabhupada as Diksha and Siksha Guru for all of his followers and disciples. This is much different than other groups who have various other approaches to the preaching work of the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition. And we are confident that Srila Prabhupada is the pure devotee of Lord Chaitanya, and he has proven it over and over again in the extraordinary compilation of instructions in his books, his lectures, and in his letters. So we would like to move forward with the program today. We're reading from Caitanya-caritāmṛta, and we started at the beginning, and we've been diligently going through step by step, word by word, to get the absolute truth from the lips of the pure devotee. So I'd like to turn the class over to my wonderful scholarly godbrother, who's really a blessing for all of us, Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu. Haribo Yaśodā-nandana, glories to Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Do we have a kirtan, or we have already had kirtan?
Yes, sure. I'll play it now.
Okay, do you want me to start the reading, or are you going to have kirtan?
Yaśodā-nandana
Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shanyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namo Mahabhadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratvishe Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhaktashaktikam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Rup Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunatha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So welcome everybody to this reading of Sri Caitanya-caritāmṛta. We will be reading from the original 1974 non-adulterated, non-edited version of Sri Caitanya-caritāmṛta. All translations, synonyms, purports, and commentaries are from His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda, Founder-Ācārya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, also known as the Krishna Consciousness Movement. We'll be reading from Ādi Lila, chapter 1, text number 55. Is that correct, Venkat?
Yes, that's right.
55. Yata mahanti bhutani bhuteshu uchavacheshu anu pravishtani apravishtani tatateshu nateshvaham. Yata, as mahanti, the universal, bhutani, elements, bhuteshu, in the living entities, ucha avacheshu, both gigantic and minute, anu, after, pravishtani, situated, internally, apravishtani, situated externally, tata, so, teshu, in them, na, not, teshu, in them, aham, I. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. As the material elements entered the bodies of all living beings and yet remain outside them all, I exist within all material creations and yet am not within them. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The gross material elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, combined with the subtle material elements, mind, intelligence, and false ego, to construct the bodies of this material world. And yet, they are beyond these bodies as well. Any material construction is nothing but an amalgamation of combination or combination of material elements in varied proportions. These elements exist both within and beyond the body. For example, although the sky exists in space, it also enters within the body. Similarly, the Supreme Lord, who is the cause of the material energy, lives within the material world as well as beyond it. Without his presence within the material world, the cosmic body could not develop, just as without the presence of the spirit within the physical body, the body could not develop. The entire material manifestation develops and exists because the Supreme Personality of Godhead enters it as Paramatma, or the Super Soul. The personality of Godhead in his all-pervading feature of Paramatma enters every entity, from the biggest to the most minute. His existence can be realized by one who has the single qualification of submissiveness and who thereby becomes a surrendered soul. The development of submissiveness is the cause of proportionate spiritual realization, by which one can ultimately meet the Supreme Lord in person as a man meets another man face to face. Because of his development of transcendental attachment for the Supreme Lord, a surrendered soul feels the presence of his beloved everywhere, and all his senses are engaged in the loving service of the Lord. His eyes are engaged in seeing the beautiful couple, Sri Radha and Krishna, sitting on a decorated throne beneath a desire tree in the transcendental land of Vrindavana. His nose is engaged in smelling the spiritual aroma of the lotus feet of the Lord. Similarly, his ears are engaged in hearing messages from Vaikuntha, and his hands embrace the lotus feet of the Lord and his associates. Thus, the Lord is manifested to a pure devotee from within and without. This is one of the mysteries of the devotional relationship in which a devotee and the Lord are bound by a tie of spontaneous love. To achieve this love should be the goal of life for every living being. So this is another very important verse from the Chatushloki Bhagavata, or the 4 essential verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam, from the second canto. And here Srila Prabhupada is describing some very important points. In the first paragraph, Prabhupada is explaining one who is less intelligent is captivated by the wonderful activities of Maya, but he does not understand that behind these activities is the direction of the Supreme Lord. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Maya dyakshena prakritihi suyate sacharacharam. The material nature is working and producing moving and non-moving beings only by the supervision of Krishna, Bhagavad Gita 9:10. So this is an important point, because in the material world, we see that living beings, especially human beings, are very conditioned. They're conditioned from birth in a certain country, in a certain family, in a certain environment. They're conditioned according to their previous karma or previous activities, with a certain degree of intelligence, with a certain set of senses. They're conditioned by their ethnic background, so-called religious background, linguistic background, so many different upadis. Upadis means designations. That's why Srila Prabhupada many times would explain that the path of bhakti begins, sarva upadi vinirmuktam, tat paratvena nirmalam, that all of these different upadis or various designations, material designations, have to be cleared out. One has to solidly understand that he is not the body. This body is simply the covering for the spirit soul. Then, rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktiruchyate, that bhakti or devotion to the Lord means to engage the senses in the service of rishikesha, which means the master of the senses. So this is a very important point, because we see sometimes different practitioners of bhakti yoga will learn to a certain level, and then they will tend to become deviated from the standards set by the bona fide acharya due to the reoccurrence or the coming back of various upadis. They're trying to adjust the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, the philosophy of Shuddha Bhakti or pure devotion as given by the Acharya, by trying to adjust according to their mundane ideas, speculative mundane ideas due to conditioning. For example, some people will criticize the Acharya, saying that he does not quite understand the position of such and such group of people. He did not understand certain races of people. He did not understand the sexual orientation of certain other people. These are all speculative ideas. The pure devotee is in touch with Krishna 24 hours a day. There is a philosophy behind this. It is not just sentiment or emotion. Prabhupada was once asked by one of his sannyasis in Calcutta, so the spiritual master, when he closes his eyes, what does he see? Prabhupada pointed his finger and says, that you do not need to ask. So then the sannyasi kept on and says, well, the pure devotee, when he closes his eyes, what does he see? Prabhupada says, the pure devotee, when he closes his eyes, he sees the pastimes of Radha Krishna manifest in his heart 24 hours a day. So when we analyze the pure devotee in various statements at various times about different subjects matter, about different groups of people, different ethnic background, different religious issues, different race issues, we have to remember who we're dealing with. Who is it that we're dealing with? What is the position of that person? What is the position of a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada? We keep reading these books. We see that Prabhupada is giving so much knowledge, so much information. But where is that information from? We keep hearing certain people saying, we are following the tradition. Okay, what tradition are you following? From whom? And where did this person get his understanding of the tradition? Bona fide Vaishnava tradition has to be understood from the bona fide Vaishnava-Ācārya. This is a very important point, because nowadays, many devotees are asking the question, so how is it that so many devotees of Krishna, so many followers of Prabhupada have so many disparate understanding of the philosophy that he taught and implemented? Why is it that there are so many differences of views and understanding? Why is that? Prabhupada has explained that very nicely in his books. In the 4th canto of the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada predicted very nicely. 4th canto, chapter 28, text 48. Uttishta rajarishe imam udhadi me kalam dasubhyaha kshata bandubhyo bibhyatim patum harahasi. O best of kings, please get up, get up. Just see this world surrounded by water and infested with rogues and so-called kings. This world is very much afraid, and it is your duty to protect her. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Whenever an Acharya comes, following the superior orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his representative, he establishes the principles of religion as enunciated in Bhagavad Gita. Religion means abiding by the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Religious principles begin from the time one surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is the Acharya's duty to spread a bona fide religious system and induce everyone to bow down before the Supreme Lord. One executes the religious principles by rendering devotional service, specifically the 9 items like hearing, chanting, and remembering. Unfortunately, when the Acharya disappears, rogues and non-devotees take advantage and immediately begin to introduce unauthorized principles in the name of so-called swamis, yogis, philanthropists, welfare workers, and so on. Actually, human life is meant for executing the orders of the Supreme Lord. And this is stated in Bhagavad Gita 9:34. Manmana bhava mad bhaktu madhyajim mam namaskuru mameveshyasi yuktvevam atmanam matparayanaham. Engage your mind always in thinking of me and become my devotee. Offer obeisances and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. The main business of human society is to think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead at all times, to become his devotees, to worship the Supreme Lord and to bow down before him. The Acharya, the authorized representative of the Supreme Lord, establishes these principles. But when he disappears, things once again become disordered. The perfect disciples of the Acharya try to relieve the situation by sincerely following the instructions of the spiritual master. At the present moment, practically, the entire world is afraid of rogues and non-devotees. Therefore, this Krishna consciousness movement is started to save the world from irreligious principles. Everyone should cooperate with this movement in order to bring about actual peace and happiness in the world. Again, the foregoing was from the Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 28, Text 48. Now, why are we reading this? Because we're seeing, many devotees have brought to our attention that there's some kind of preaching by certain type of scholars or pseudo-scholars that claim that Prabhupada was influenced by his upbringing, by his conditioning, by neo-colonialism, by racism, by a homophobic idea, by certain cultural ethnic ideas. So this is a symptom that these persons have become bewildered by the illusory energy because they do not understand the position of the liberated Acharya. Prabhupada was such a transcendental person, and it is very risky for any devotee or any disciple especially who claims to be a follower of Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada to criticize even indirectly or subtly under the guise of academic correctness. This is a very dangerous position. Prabhupada had a conversation in 1972 in Vrindavan, India on March 10th, 1972 with a devotee named John Greaser, later initiated as Yaduvara Das. Prabhupada says, but in devotion, there is no karma kanda. As Krishna is free from all reaction, similarly, Krishna's devotee who wants to satisfy Krishna only, he's free from all reaction. Therefore, Krishna says, Acharya mam vijaniyan navamanyena karichit, Srimad Bhagavatam 11, 17, 27. The Acharya is as good as I am. Krishna says, Navamanyena karichit, never neglect him. Namartya buddhyasuyeta, never be envious of the Acharya, thinking him as anything of this material world. Acharya mam vijaniyan. Therefore, Acharya's position is as good as Krishna. Sakshadaritvena samasta shastrer. Acharya is always cautious that he may not be subject to criticism. But one who criticizes Acharya, he becomes immediately offender because he's playing the part of Acharya. He plays as far as possible. But sometimes for preaching work, he might have to do something which is not consistent. But if he's criticized, then that man who criticizes, he becomes, of course, he must be Acharya, not a bogus. Ordinary man cannot transgress the laws. But Krishna and his representative Acharya might be sometimes seen that he has transgressed. Therefore, Krishna says, Acharya mam vijaniyan Vaishnavera kriya mudra vigneya nabujaya. In the Caitanya-caritāmṛta, Vaishnavacharya, his activities is not understood even by the wisest man. Vaishnavara kriya mudra vigneya nabujaya. Brahmani upavasramayam. Acharya, Guru, is completely surrendered to Krishna. He has taken the shelter of Krishna, being completely freed from all material affection. Brahmani upasamasrayam. Everything, everyone has got some material desire to fulfill. But a Guru Acharya has no such business. That is the symptom of Acharya. He has no more any material business. Brahmani upasramasrayam. He has finished all business of material satisfaction. That is the symptom of Acharya. In Shabde Parijanishnatam, and he has taken full bath in the ocean of transcendental. Shabde Parijanishnatam Brahmani upasamasrayam Tasmad Gurum Prapadyeta. Bhagavatam 11, 321. One should surrender to such spiritual master, Jignasu Shrayottamam, when he's actually serious about inquiring the transcendental subject matter. Otherwise, there is no need of accepting Guru or Acharya. He has no business if one is not interested in the transcendental subject matter. Well, somebody may ask, why are we reading all this? Because especially for these devotees of Krishna who have accepted Srila Prabhupada as their guru or spiritual master, whether they're initiated devotees or followers or sympathizers, people should take note of this. One should never criticize the Acharya. What we're seeing now is certain class of people under the guise of so-called scholarship, so-called academic preaching, are openly criticizing the Acharya, finding fault with some different groups. So this is a situation where one has to take note of the position where Prabhupada says, but who criticizes the Acharya, he becomes immediately offender. Sometimes for preaching work, he may have to do something which is not consistent. But if he's criticized in that manner criticizes, he becomes. So this is a warning from the Shastra and from the Acharya that these disciples who become so-called educated with various titles, who do not understand the philosophy and the exalted position of the Acharya, should be extremely careful how they articulate their so-called academic opinions and academic judgment. Prabhupada is totally transcendental. And even if he says something which may be contrary to popular or social convention or social opinion, the position of the Acharya is always transcendental. Very important point to understand. That verse from the Bhagavatam, Acharya Mam Vijanayan, is a very important point. It is given there as a warning by Krishna himself that one should not criticize the Acharya. If one does not agree with the Acharya or does not understand the Acharya Srila Prabhupada, the last thing one should do is to publicly and openly criticize the Acharya under the guise of so-called academic neutrality or so-called academic correctness. Very dangerous position for somebody who claims to be a disciple or follower of Srila Prabhupada. Okay, let's open up for discussion. Let's see what happens. Hare Krishna. Viśvakarmā Prabhu.
Thank you very much, Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu. And I feel that you've touched on some very significant points for us to consider in terms of our relationship with Srila Prabhupada, which is quite confused. It's quite a confused topic amongst many of our God brothers who are now relinquishing their relationship with Prabhupada for association with other Vaishnava groups and cults based on some kind of mental speculation that they've rationalized to justify that position. Here Prabhupada explains in this purport, which I thought was very profound, that the relationship of the Paramatma, the super soul, and the spiritual master are based on submissiveness. So a lot of times people begin to concoct an idea that Prabhupada, as you said, has made mistakes in his presentation because of cultural differences, etc. This is not true, because the truth isn't subject to mundane circumstances and mundane political or cultural philosophies, which goes on changing constantly in our modern world. For example, the question of women within Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada was very much a supporter of women in our movement and had a great spiritual affection for them. And he certainly honored and respected all women as his mother. And this is the proper position of the devotee, to give all respect to women, despite the fact that in some parts of the scriptures, their qualities are described differently than men. It's not meant to criticize them. It's just an analysis of the difference in the relationships between men and women. There's two different species. So some people, they want to minimize Prabhupada's words. They want to change his words in order to make his statements more, how can I say, more convenient for the modern philosophies of this day and age, which is an age of based on women's liberation, that women are equal to men on all levels. So this is, as I mentioned earlier in a previous class, this is a controversial issue. It's not something we need to pursue as a big philosophical issue, but it's an understanding of what is everyone's role in the human form of life. That's all. It's just an understanding. So in another way, this submissiveness to the spiritual master is a key. In other words, if you don't have an exclusive relationship with Srila Prabhupada in your mind as a disciple, then you have a tendency to move into other philosophies based on your own mental speculation and the speculation of those people that are preaching. For example, we have the case of some of our God brothers who have all of a sudden taken initiation from a Gaudiya Math member, a Gaudiya Math sannyasi. Now, Prabhupada told us specifically, do not associate with the members of the Gaudiya Math. Now, there are specific reasons why. Do not read the books of these other people. Concentrate on reading my books. You know, we've been discussing this in the last few days, how people want to divert away from these books that Prabhupada is prescribing, like Nectar of Devotion, Srimad Bhagavatam, Caitanya-caritāmṛta, and the Bhagavad Gita as it is, and read other people's books and translations and scriptures. This is based on their own particular understanding of what they think is best for themselves. Is that being submissive? No, that is not a submissive position. So we are very adamant about, especially we're getting a lot of people, Ram Raghava, who are calling me, quite a few people are calling me up, asking me why I'm saying this, because Prabhupada does mention in his book, so you should read this book by Jiva Goswami, and you should read other translations of the scriptures. Now, you have to be able to have an understanding of how to put this in context. So I asked them, first of all, this question, Jiva Goswami. I asked them, have you read all of Prabhupada's books yet? What's the answer? No. No, I haven't read the Srimad Bhagavatam in its entirety yet. Oh, okay. So maybe you should consider reading that first. And then Caitanya-caritāmṛta, have you read that yet? No. Well, maybe you consider reading that and try to figure out what's in those 17 volumes. I love Yaśodā-nanda, you give that quote of Prabhupada saying about the Nectar of Devotion, Jiva Goswami. Prabhupada talks about it. He said, the devotees asked him, well, I read the Nectar of Devotion, excuse me, and I didn't really understand it. And then I'm paraphrasing, where Prabhupada told them, well, then read it again. And then if you still don't understand it, read it again. Until you understand the books that I've written. Prabhupada wants us to understand his books first. Then after you do that, when you feel you're so qualified to present Krishna consciousness, and you might look at other literatures that he's recommending, then go ahead and do that. But then you're fixed on a transcendental platform of understanding that you become a proper preacher and represent Prabhupada's teachings without any speculation or adulteration or confusion. This is going on in our mission that a lot of people do to arrogance. Unfortunately, it is really arrogant. You can see it in them. And it's almost like an American arrogance more than anything, where they've got this arrogance that they think they know everything. And there they are, they march around with their pink robes and their so-called banner of renunciation, when in fact they've got huge bank accounts, they've got all kinds of material attachments they're cultivating, and they're retranslating or representing the books, and in some cases even declaring PPB. What kind of madness is that? Post-Prabhupada books. These so-called God brothers are speaking like that. Are they submissive? Well, to anyone that understands listening, then you realize they're not listening to Prabhupada's instructions, and therefore they're off on their own tangent, trying to build a group of followers or disciples and bank accounts and position in this world, which has nothing to do with the Sankirtan mission and the Sampradaya of Srila Prabhupada and our position as disciples. So I thought the personality of Godhead in his all-pervading feature of Paramatma enters in every living entity, from the biggest to the most minute. His existence can be realized by one who has the single qualification of submissiveness, and who thereby becomes a surrendered soul. The development of submissiveness is the cause of proportionate spiritual realization, by which one can ultimately meet the Supreme Lord in person, as a man meets another face to face. So here is one of the important messages of today's class, is for people to always remain in a humble state of mind and remain submissive before the Lord and the pure devotee spiritual master, His Divine Grace A.C, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda. So more comments from the floor, please.
We have a hand raised. I don't see it now. Balram Prabhu.
Excellent.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Yes, I think we can see that what they're trying to do is to falsely accommodate Srila Prabhupada's words and his teachings for the current climate. When you were looking for a word before, I was thinking they're trying to accommodate what Srila Prabhupada says for the current issue. The other thing is also seeing Srila Prabhupada as a mundane personality, obviously spiritually advanced, but with subject to the material qualities. And I think this was brought out very much in the Prabhupada Lilamrita. And I've read part of the deconstruction of the Lilamrita. So I'm just wondering if Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu might just maybe briefly comment on that, because I know a lot of devotees still refer to the Prabhupada Lilamrita as something of a Bible of Srila Prabhupada's preaching activities. So Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu, maybe if you could make a brief comment on that, because I do encounter many Prabhupada disciples, newer devotees who still think in this way. Hare Krishna.
Yes, this is a very important point, because if we recall the time that this book was written, It was at the height of this madness of the zonal Acharya, self-appointed Acharya era in ISKCON for the first few years after his manifested presence from 1978 to 1982. So they wrote this book that's an alleged biography. One devotee one time suggested to me and says, there's no record anywhere that Prabhupada ever gave instruction for devotees to write a biography of his life. And Prabhupada says in the Srimad Bhagavatam, I believe it's either in the 7th canto or 8th canto in one purport, there's no need to understand the past activities of a Vaishnava, of a pure Vaishnava. I'm paraphrasing here. Because what happens when a neophyte tries to analyze the activities of a Mahabhagavat, basically you have a very difficult situation. They're trying to analyze the activities and the thoughts and the mental makeup and the mental understanding of a pure devotee who is on the topmost platform. And in the process, there's a lot of speculation. For example, I've seen in that book, there is a statement. It says that Prabhupada was like a derelict in the street when he was in New York living in the Bowery. And kind of statements like that are not acceptable to any intelligent, serious devotee. Another place they describe Prabhupada was shaken. He was afraid. He was cold. He was hot. Prabhupada perhaps had never seen snow. These kind of speculative statements about the position of a pure devotee are very, very misleading, very dangerous and misleading. I have compiled, or many of us have compiled, a little publication called Lilamrita Review, which is basically a review of various statements that were compiled in the Lilamrita and Srila Prabhupada's statements in his own books of how he describes how to understand the position of a pure devotee. Because what we have here, we have somebody's subjective interpretation of what Prabhupada was. And it's very, very troublesome because we see so many false statements, misleading statements, improper statements about the position of a pure devotee. And this is, just like there's a place where they describe Prabhupada was attached to matter. Well, the pure devotee is never attached to matter or anything like that. So we have to understand the position of a Nitya Siddha, or an eternally liberated soul who comes to this world to teach Krishna consciousness, to preach Krishna consciousness according to time, place, and circumstances. For example, Prabhupada says, due to deep ecstatic love for Krishna, the Mahabhagavata sees Krishna everywhere and nothing else. This is confirmed in Brahma Samhita, Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena. This is from Caitanya-caritāmṛta, Madhya-lila 8-74. So there's a lot of statements in that book which are not according to Prabhupada's teachings. What to speak of the great inaccuracies and misrepresentations of the conversations with Srila Prabhupada about initiations in 1977. There's a lot of convenient interpretation to try to justify their system. And subsequently, most of these nonsense statements have been debunked. So anybody who wants, I can forward them that article. It has hundreds of quotes from Srila Prabhupada, where Prabhupada explains the meaning of a pure devotee. For example, there's a place, the Lilamrita claimed that Srila Prabhupada was dangerously old. It says that he was like most old men, like a toting fodder. Quote from the Lilamrita. He was making a momentous break with his previous life, and he was dangerously old and not in strong health, and he was going to an unknown and probably unwelcoming country. This is from Lilamrita, page 287. Another place, one boy, Stanley, was quite young, and Prabhupada, almost like a doting father, watched over him as he ate. But however, Prabhupada states in the Bhagavatam, my dear king, A devotee who was taking shelter of the dust from the lotus feet of the Lord can transcend the influence of the 6 material whips, namely hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, old age, and death. And he can conquer the mind and 5 senses. Another place, this is from Bhagavatam 5.135. Another statement by Srila Prabhupada. Another symptom of a liberated person is vijara, which indicates that he is not subjected to the miseries of old age. Bhagavatam 5.4.5. Another time, the Lilamrita claims that Prabhupada was starving. When Abhay arrived, he appeared very poor, starving. He had no means. This is from Lilamrita, page 164. And here we go. Prabhupada says, Dhruva Maharaj was so advanced that he only took 1 breath of air every 12 days, and his strength and happiness increased immeasurably. In transcendental ecstasy, Raghunath Goswami ate 1 slice of butter every alternate day. Queen Kunti fasted without inconvenience for 30 days. Because he was on the same transcendental platform as these great souls, Srila Prabhupada could not have suffered a starving condition. What to speak of Srila Prabhupada, who is the greatest yogi. Even mystic yogis who are still siddhi kami can live without food and suffer the pangs of starvation. Prabhupada says in the Bhagavatam, it appears that even if a yogi does not drink a pot of water, he can live for many, many years. Bhagavatam 7:3-18-19. Like this, there's a lot of explanations from Prabhupada's own statements of how to understand the life of a pure devotee, how to understand the position of a pure devotee and not be misled by this propaganda piece of the Lilamrita. Comments, remarks, questions? Yes, Madhuranda Baya, you seem to raise your hand. No? You have a comment? No comment? Okay.
Ron Singh, please. Ronald Singh.
Microphone.
Oh, okay, there we go. So I'd like to bring attention to Srila Prabhupada's direction for the movement. Like we're discussing that we should not change the teachings and we should not, and there's many signed and documented letters like the direction of management and the incorporation of Prabhupada's Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, and then his final will and testament. These are, substantial documents. What to speak about the books? It's very clear direction on how he wanted the movement to progress, into the future from 1970 all the way till now.
Yes,
Excellent.
That's a very good point. That's an excellent point. The question is whether or not these instructions have been followed, because many devotees are concerned, to put it tactfully, and some of them are even more than concerned. They are worried that if the current trend of the tendency to change everything is allowed to continue, the original purity and potency of the movement will be adversely affected. Just like I saw a video today, as a matter of fact, you put online where you're interviewing a young lady and you had a very good point. And you ask her whether or not she ate meat. And you're trying to explain how there is no such thing as non-violent slaughter. And the young lady realized she was defeated in her position. And you very tactfully brought up that in order to be non-violent, you cannot kill animals. So it's very similar to the situation we're facing with many devotees or groups of devotees saying, well, we follow Swami Prabhupada, we follow Bhaktivedanta Swami, we follow his instructions, we follow his teachings. But yet, as you mentioned, Ronald, that there's a lot of devotees manufacturing different interpretations of Prabhupada's teachings, of Prabhupada's directives, of Prabhupada's orders, of Prabhupada's books. And this is the problem, just like we recently had a discussion, why in some temples in that society, some people are manufacturing new mantras. They're having a kirtan with new mantras that to those of us that were present during Prabhupada's time, or even regular devotees, even those that were not present, they know that Prabhupada did not invent new mantras. But these new mantras are they're infiltrating the society and spreading like a virus. Now, some of them are very melodious. People are dancing like gypsies and everything. But this is not what Srila Prabhupada is given. Prabhupada gives specific prescription that the kirtan, this is mentioned in Caitanya-caritāmṛta, when Prabhupada is explaining that this mantra, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam, may be good poetry, but it's not authorized. This is not an authorized mantra by the bona fide acharyas in our disciplic succession. And he says that the Panchatattva Mahamantra, Panchatattva mantra, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadada, Sri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda, and the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That these are the authorized mantras. And Prabhupada gave specific instructions. For example, for Mangal Arti, Prabhupada said, after you finish the Samsara prayers, you can also chant that song of Bhaktivedanta Thakur, Jeev Jago. And also after the Mangal Arti and the Kirtan, you could chant that song, Udila Aruna, well, a description of Lord Chaitanya going on Sankirtan with his associates. So there's specific directions that Prabhupada wanted for Kirtan. Same thing with his books. He did not want his books to be perfectly edited for grammatical embellishment. But we see that this trend has taken hold, and now we have different set of books. There's one book that says he has seen the truth, another set of books that says they have seen the truth. So this is very dangerous trend. Same thing with so many issues that we're facing about the direction of management, the books, the standard of deity worship and everything. And the leadership is preoccupied to maintain their position and their illusory idea of being great acharyas, to go down to the basic fundamentals, to correct the mistakes, the dangerous mistakes that have been made, and implement Prabhupada's instruction. But you brought up a very good point, excellent point. Any other questions or remarks?
Yes, I have my hand up. I wanted to read the comment in the chat from Andabaya Devidasi. I remember when we first moved to Gitanagari in 2014, and Satsrup's paintings were hanging in the lobby. The temple president was not happy about it and wanted them out and eventually removed them. Yet the same temple president currently is having readings from the Guru's Leelamrita. So this strikes on two important points. The one point is the duplicitous behavior of these unauthorized elected gurus that exist in the ISKCON movement, which was never authorized by Srila Prabhupada. And the manifestation of the confusion that these God brothers are presenting to people in general is absolutely, let's say, pathetic. All of you are familiar with the current crisis that's appeared in Mayapur with the head schoolmaster, Bhaktivedanta Purna. And it has become, just so all of you know, I was never aware of this before at all. I had no idea who was in charge of this school in Mayapur. And I had one of my godbrothers, you might know him, Pragosh Prabhu, the book distributor from Detroit, was a good friend of mine. And he was having his family live in Mayapur, and he sent his kids to this school. Little to his knowledge, they were exposed to all of this corruption that went on in the leadership group there. So now his children, who are grown adults, are coming out and becoming part of the whistleblowers that are telling the truth about the abuse that's gone on for over 25 years. It's absolutely a proof beyond a doubt that this guru system has failed dramatically. And now most recently, we have letters coming out from these different so-called gurus that should be perfect devotees, that should speak with perfection, because they're Uttama-adhikaris, so-called. They're pure devotees. They're acharyas. They sit on the vyasasans. They have people drinking their foot bath water. Excuse me. This kind of thing is going on, and it is an atrocity to our disciplic succession. This is not a small thing. If you saw, and I think all of you saw these recent letters that were written. First, there was a letter that came out from Indradumna Swami. Okay, so he writes a letter. Now, if you go, I read the letter. I didn't comment on the letter. But what happened was his own disciples commented on it. And some of them saw the contradictions of philosophy in how Prabhupada was teaching us to conduct our affairs and how he's explaining how we should see these problems. Shivaram Swami, this is a fellow that's in Hungary. He's done this service over the years in Hungary. He's originally from Canada. I just talked about him before. He writes a 4-page letter. I recommend all of the people in this group read that 4-page letter. See the kind of hole he digs for himself in the letter. You can do your own analysis of it. It's not necessary for me to go over every point and analyze it for all of you. You're all intelligent men and women. Read that. And then read his 8-page follow-up letter, which is trying to explain what he meant by his first letter. And there you go. It gets worse and worse and worse by the minute. Now, what's happened? It's caused a schism in his group, not in my group, not in our group, in their group, that a lot of people are seeing the contradictions in these people's words and their behavior. And this kind of hypocrisy is not going to be tolerated by intelligent people. This has been pure, absolute mercy. Like I always say this, brother. What happened to Kirtananda? Was it a bad thing or was it a good thing? Well, it was Krishna's thing. When that person took his pipe, what was his name? Jagradari, or I can't remember the name of the fellow. It was one of his disciples. He took a lead pipe and beat Kirtananda's head in with it. Does that sound like karma? I think so. Look what happened to Jayatirtha. His disciple took a small knife and tried to sever the person's head from it, from his body. How pathetic is that? And on it goes. Well, I don't want to get into these examples because they're ghastly. They're not, it's not a, people criticize us. They say, oh, you guys are finding fault. Excuse me. Did I do that? Did I write the reports? Did I put them in the newspaper? Did any of you do that? We're just repeating what we know is a fact. There are lots of whistleblowers in that mission that know the atrocities that have gone on, but out of a compromised paranoia, they don't say a word. That's not the position of a real devotee. A devotee speaks the truth. A devotee tells the truth, because that is our duty to our spiritual master and to Krishna, to tell the truth. Yes, this is a war of words. Now, a lot of people are criticizing us. I know that. A lot of people criticize. I had a guy threaten me today on Facebook. You know, hey, you better stop, or I'm going to do this or that, or blah, blah, blah. Oh, okay. Go ahead. You know, try to do something. See if anything happens. But at the same time, the point is that we are not saying something that's not true. Be clear with that. I want everybody to know this in the group, by the way. If you don't agree with what we're saying, we're quite open for you to bring up the points, either in the talk here or after in emails. We want to have a group of people here that feel united on the same points of philosophy. We're not interested in a dictatorial work here as a group. We're a group of people, God brothers and God sisters, either aspiring Prabhupada disciples or initiated Prabhupada disciples, that are simply here to promote Prabhupada's message of working cooperatively together. That's what we're here for, to work cooperatively together to spread the mission of Lord Chaitanya under his instructions. That's Prabhupada's instruction. I remember that clearly to us. You'll be able to demonstrate your love for me by how you work cooperatively together to spread the Krishna consciousness movement. Not fight, not be ambitious to get money, not be ambitious to have name and fame. That is not our goal here at this group at all. In fact, I'm very honored to have such a nice membership that I can be a part of. I don't miss the classes, as you can see. And remember, we're all doing this voluntarily, Jivan Mukta or Jiva Goswami. We're volunteering our time. Everybody in this room. And are we interested in money? No. Are we interested in followers? No. What's our goal? Our goal is to speak the truth and propagate the Krishna consciousness movement with a proper understanding of what Prabhupada wanted us to do after his departure. And that's not being done by these people in this ISKCON movement. That is a fact. I defy them to prove it to us. I defy it. They can't. And look at some of the God brothers here are senior members of the mission. You take a bunch of people like Kirtananda. I had extensive work with this man. Now, we know his history. I'm not going to go through it. It's not necessary. But the fact of the matter was he a hoax? Yes, he was. Was Jayatirtha a hoax? Yes, he was. Is Harikesh a hoax? Yes, he is. And now they built a system similar to the system that these people introduced, and now the whole thing has become a complete farce. That's what's going on. Jiva Goswami, please make a comment.
My comment is the analysis of why they are successful in their endeavors. And for me, one of the main ingredients of their success is the situation where they create a family. And in a family, there's a great deal of benefit for those people in the family in terms of support and in terms of interactions and in terms of a warm feeling together. In my particular case, when I came to Krishna Consciousness, there was an entire system set up that supported me in terms of developing according to this deviated philosophy of having unauthorized gurus lead the movement. And they let not only with the disciples and potential disciples, but also with the temple authorities. So therefore, everything I did in the first 21 years of my Krishna conscious lifestyle was supported in a very kind and loving way. I made literally hundreds of friends that were dear friends of mine, and it was all based on a farce, as we can see now. However, it's a very powerful farce because of the family feeling that everybody gets. And so what I want to emphasize for myself is the fact that we, as Prabhupada disciples, need to also create this family situation for one another and not spend all of our time objecting to what other people do, but spend a lot of our time developing ourselves in this capacity to love, understand, and support one another. So please, that is my request.
Venkat, could you make a comment, please?
Yeah, sure. I wanted to discuss a slightly different topic, going back to what Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu was talking about, where we should not read, there's no need to read any other books and all that. So I mentioned this in our last meeting. There's an article, and I was just going through, I obtained the full article and I was just going through it, and I just wanted to, if you don't mind, see, I tried highlighting, the problematic parts of this article. This is written by a scholar, so-called Sanskrit scholar, and he's a so-called disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and he's also an initiating guru. And but the kind of things written here are so offensive. He says Prabhupada was not offering his followers a systematic presentation of Krishna Bhakti theology. That just makes no sense, because in many places Prabhupada says that he's, in fact, I have those quotes, in my books, the philosophy of Krishna consciousness is explained fully. So if there is anything you do not understand, then you simply have to read again and again. By reading daily, the knowledge will be revealed to you, and by this process, your spiritual life will develop. Srila Prabhupada is directly saying that, whereas this person is saying, total opposite. And then there's just a lot of, offensive things. I tried highlighting, the problematic parts, but it just becomes, the whole book, I didn't go through the whole article yet, but this probably requires like a separate conversation by itself. Not everything that Prabhupada spoke is absolutely the highest teaching that he offered. That's one thing. Anyways, so I just wanted to mention that, and Prabhupada says, right, in one conversation, that as soon as one gets a little bit knowledgeable in Sanskrit, the tendency is there to like step over a guru. I don't have the exact conversation, but that's exactly what is happening with so many so-called scholars. So that's what I wanted to discuss. Thank you.
I think that's also in the case of another godbrother who went to Harvard University. And by the way, to get a PhD from Harvard is anywhere from $500,000 to $750,000. Now the question is, where did he get the money to do that? Number one. Two, Prabhupada had specifically ordered him not to do it, and he went ahead and did it anyway. Similarly with Tamal Krishna. Tamal Krishna went ahead, was trying to finish his PhD. Hridayananda went ahead and got his PhD. And I'm in contact with Garuda as well. I'm having some chat with him, let's say. I haven't looked at his articles yet to see his, so-called scholastic explanation of the philosophy and his our relationship with Prabhupada. but I think it would be good for these people to try to get association with senior godbrothers that they know that can help them understand the exclusivity of the relationship between the disciple and the guru. There is an exclusive relationship between both parties, and it's most profoundly revealed in this. Most recently, Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu sent me Prabhupada's 1961 Vyas Puja offering to Bhaktisiddhanta. The person that demonstrates the true understanding of the relationship between disciple and guru for us is our guru, Srila Prabhupada. He, of all the people that we know in this tradition, exemplified that relationship with his guru and the exclusivity of it in terms of focus. It is not just whimsical that you just go from this person, read this book, go do this thing, chant these mantras, do this and that. It is the specific science of connectivity with the bona fide spiritual master. And we want to present that to the group, from our group to the new people that come, that there is an exclusive relationship between you and our spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. And that is the secret of success in going back home, back to Godhead. There is no other way. No other way. Yes, Jiva Goswami, please.
In the Nectar of Devotion, Srila Prabhupada says that we are Rupanugas because we follow the teachings of, not the teachings of, but the compilation of Lord Chaitanya's teachings by Srila Rupa Goswami. And I wanted to mention that as my wife and I go through the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, which describes all these different relationships with Srila Rupa Goswami, Srila Sanatana Goswami, and the 6 Goswamis, almost every page has at least 2 or 3 references to other books that Srila Prabhupada has read, analyzed, and compiled quotes from, so that there's no need to go and read other books. It's already described by the Acharya in clear, simple language that even I can understand. So please just thoroughly go through this teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and you'll see that it's already been done. The work has been done. It's not necessary for me to learn Sanskrit and go to understand Srila Rupa Goswami. It's impossible for me to do that. It's not impossible for me to understand the simple language of my guru, Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you. Excellent. We're going to go ahead. We're at 9:18. Remember, we're doing this as part of our class series on our Prabhupada TV. So we're going to carry on for the last few comments. Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu, please.
Prabhu, you're on mute. Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu.
I just want to point out something with regards to the statements about a family. In 1978, Prajimna Prabhu, Panditji, and myself, and various other devotees in Vrindavan warned the GBC that if they kept on with that particular propaganda they were doing about Vyasasanas and everything else they were doing, this was going to create a lot of chaos and disturbance in the society. Well, basically, they laughed and kicked us out and everything. But what I find here is many devotees do not understand what happened early on, why there was so much chaos. The chaos is because various motivated individuals put their own personal ambition ahead of following the orders of the spiritual master. What do we mean by that? Let me give you an example. One Gurukul teacher went to one of the sannyasis that was based in Mayapur, a flamboyant sannyasis that was also based in Australia. And they asked him, it says, a lot of Prabhupada's disciples are very concerned that Prabhupada's family will be affected by this, by the way you're introducing all these guru principles, the Vyasasanas, the first worship of these gurus. And the reply from this individual was a big laugh. And he said, let them all leave, these Prabhupada disciples. We've got our own disciples now, ha, ha, ha. And he said, there is nothing to discuss. We have already decided everything. They should just accept. So as much as I appreciate the nice, loving thoughts of a family and good environment, the reality is many disciples of Srila Prabhupada were forced out and kicked out of this organization, of this movement, by ambitious men, by ambitious disciples that were polluted by the pod problem, profit, adoration, and distinction. That's why they insisted on being worshipped like Srila Prabhupada, insisted on their nonsense propaganda and misinterpretation that they had been appointed as Prabhupada's successors, and so many other falsehoods. So family, just like it says, a family that prays together stays together. Well, ISKCON's family, Prabhupada's family, didn't stay together. Many children were abused, many devotees were kicked out. There was a lot of chaos, and it's still chaos because of that disease that had infiltrated the society, which is based on minimization of Srila Prabhupada and disobedience of his instructions. That disobedience and disregard of Prabhupada's instruction is the root cause of all problems in this society. Prabhupada wrote a letter to Kuranda in the middle 1970s. He said, Prabhupada says, if there is any problem in our society, it means that the instructions of the spiritual master are being neglected and not followed. I'm paraphrasing here, unquote. So the disease is not that there's no loving sentiment or loving family. There's plenty of that. But if it's not based on Siddhanta, if it's not based on Prabhupada's instruction, it's simply based on emotion and sentiment, it doesn't last. It will not last. There's a philosophy, there is a science behind it. We're not Rupianugas. We're Rupanugas, not Rupianugas. We're meant not to be Kali Chelas or people simply running around for money. That is not our mission. One sannyasi once asked Srila Prabhupada, well, if we have to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world, it's going to require a lot of money. Prabhupada says, don't worry for money. You chant 16 rounds and follow these principles, and money will fall at your feet. There's no need for concocting all kinds of bogus nonsense cheating methods and rock and roll records and Korean oil paintings and cheating people left and right. There's no need of that. Simply we have to follow Srila Prabhupada, presented his instructions, and then everything will flourish. That is the whole idea why we are meeting together, to properly understand Prabhupada's instruction and present our best understanding of what it is to be a Prabhupada-nuga or Rupanuga. There's a group of people who claim to be Rupanugas, but in fact, they are Rupianuga. Okay,
Excellent.
what's the next part of the program?
Okay, just 1 second. I'll finish up here. I think, yes, Jiva Goswami made a very good comment. What he's saying, and I agree with him, is that we as a group should support each other. And it can be a support outside of the classes per se. Like all of us are making an effort to establish transcendental relationships with each other and cooperate together to try to help each other. That is a good part of building a team. For example, and we'll finish up with this, when you have a successful team, you have many people in the team that are working together. Like, for example, a sports team. And we're all familiar with sports, especially with the soccer so popular right now worldwide. Everybody's infatuated with the soccer. So you've got the coaches, and you've got the ownership group, and you've got the players, and you've got the stars, you've got the goaltender, you've got all these people. Does anyone think most of these great players never present themselves as the star of the team? They never do. Doesn't matter who it is. Soon as they someone recognizes them, they deflect. Oh, it was because my teammates passed me the ball. It was because the coach gave me the right advice, like that. So this is the kind of family atmosphere that we want to develop, is strong communication between each other and explanation. Sometimes, everyone, some things may be misunderstood in an environment like this, where someone may say something and it may seem to be this way or that way, but really we know that everybody's intent here is the same. We've got the same goal, just like the stones, you're throwing them in the water and they're all landing in the same spot. Prabhupada gave that example. And because it lands in the same spot, then there's one great effect of a wave that comes out. So like that, this is the idea with our Prabhupada Disciples group. And moving forward week after week after week, as we get farther into this, we can continue to collaborate and work together to create a very potent, it's like this. One finger doesn't do much, but when you take the fist and punch somebody, it hurts. It can hurt you or it can hurt them. But the fact of the matter is, when there are 5 people gathered together, Prabhupada uses that reference in that Vyasa Puj presentation. When we're joined together as a bundle of sticks, then we have a great deal of strength together. And that's our goal here at the Prabhupada Disciples Association. And I want to thank everybody for attending. We've reached the end of the class. If you have any questions further or any dialogue, you can get a hold of Venkat, and he can supply you with the email addresses of everyone. And you can also, try to reach us. I'm certainly available at any time if anybody has any suggestions or ideas on what we can do to make everything better. We're learning how to do this together. It's not easy, but we're laying down a legacy for the future that will enable new people that come here to get a proper understanding of what Prabhupada wanted us to do after his departure. Prabhu, I see your hands up. Balaram Das, please.
Yes, Hare Krishna. But just something I'd like to mention just in closing. There's a, what would you call it? There's a blog or a site called the Vedic Inquirer. And I've noticed that there are some devotees from the group here have made comments and obviously read that. That's monitored by a devotee, Damodar Das in Australia. I think he was initiated by Bhakti Charu, and he was president of Soho in England for a couple of years before he came to Australia. He's a UK devotee. I just like to, because I've noticed a few of the devotees' names have popped up. I'm not a member of that. You can look at it without joining. And it was referred to me by our godbrother Sabhabadi Prabhu, who resides. He's in not good health, and he's residing in Mayapur and taking darshan of Sri Radha Madhavan and Panchatattva and the Gopis at the moment. He referred me to it, and when I looked at it, I read some of the comments that are on that and some of the statements, and there are some things on it which are obviously very true. A lot about Anadesh Bapu and things like that, and devotees made comments, but there's also some very false claims that are put on it, and I know that for a fact. So I'm just warning any devotees who are looking at that site, Vedic Inquirer, and taking things as gospel that are written there. There was one, I know for a fact, one a woman, she's probably in her 40s now, initiated, when she was younger, and she's having psychiatric attention, psychiatric treatment, and she's made some very slanderous statements on it, which are absolutely untrue. So I would just say, treat it with respect, but at the same time, I wouldn't be repeating things that we read on that site. So separate the wheat from the chaff, as Prabhupada would say.
Excellent. Thank you.
Wonderful
Okay.
reading. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Vinkat Prabhu, could you run the kirtan for us, and we'll chant out and look forward to the classes coming up on Saturday morning and Sunday.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama
Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna.
Panchakalpa Trubhyascha
Kripa sindubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo namo